Hello and a warm welcome to this special CNBC Africa broadcast coming to you from the 20th session of the United Nations World Tourism Organization's General Assembly. And of course today we are broadcasting from the iconic Royal Livingston Hotel in Zambia. Now for the next 5 days, over 700 international participants from both the public and the private sector are convening around the Victoria Falls area to discuss global strategies around creating a universally accessible tourism industry, as well as tourism's role as a driver of economic growth. As this year's assembly is being held on African soil, on today's discussion we'll be unpacking the role of tourism in Africa, as well as its potential to boost economic growth on the continent. And joining me today to unpack this topic is the Honourable Sylvia Mzembi, the Zambian Minister of Tourism and Arts. Next to her is Mr. Talib Rifai, the Secretary General for the UNWTO. Next to him is the Honourable Mzembi, the Zimbabwean Minister of Tourism and Hospitality. And last but certainly not least is Sir Richard Hawkins, Operations Executive for Africa at Sun International. I'd like to thank you all, and of course in this beautiful setting right next to the Zambezi River. The Minister Mzembi, I'm going to start with you. Now this year's session is only the second time to be held on the African continent, and for the first time in sub-Saharan Africa. The previous African session in Senegal in 2005. Now, in your opinion and from your perspective, what does an event of this size and scale and magnitude mean for exposure of Africa and its tourism industry?
Thank you very much, Natascha, and welcome to Livingston. What is actually happening now is already itself a very good privilege for Africa to showcase our countries, and in particular to emphasize the importance of tourism to Africa. As you know, tourism currently is one of the key sectors which most African governments are pursuing in pursuit of job creation and wealth creation. So to that extent, I would like to say that the co-hosting of this event in Africa will actually help to market Africa as a tourism destination, and to that extent it will bring a number of tourists to our destinations and create employment and reduce the poverty levels.
Now we've heard the Minister set context. Now let's talk about the UNWTO. It is of course the 20th session, but Ms. Rifai, can you give us some context behind the organisation, its mandate, and then from a tourism perspective in enhancing and building tourism in Africa, what do you hope to walk away with at the end of the 5-day sessions?
Thank you so much, Natascha. You know, UNWTO is one of the specialized agencies of the United Nations. It started way in 1929, actually. It's an old organization, but it became part of the UN family only recently in the last 10, 11 years. And it is a sign of recognition of how important travel and tourism has become in the world of today. It's really about people, enhancing their lives and making it better. 1 out of 11 jobs all over the world are created by the tourism industry. 9% of world GDP is from travel and tourism. And the world is yet to recognize and acknowledge the contribution of tourism to the lives of people. Today, we have 1 billion travelers crossing international borders every year. You add to that 5 to 5.5 billion that do domestic travel. So it's a revolution by all means, and it's changing the way people live in the 21st century. I think Africa is a continent that needs it most of any, and it's the new rising star because it has so much to offer. The potentials for growth are great, and they're still untapped, and that's exactly why we are here.
Now, Minister Mzembi, the hosting of this year's assembly, of course, is a joint collaboration between the governments of Zimbabwe and Zambia. And of course, the countries share a gorgeous World Heritage Site, which is actually right behind us, the Victoria Falls. Now, since the trilateral co-hosting agreement was signed into power in May 2012, what have some of the direct benefits been to both nations since then?
Well, first and foremost, this destination, until Livingstone purportedly discovered it. It was the world's best kept secret. And it has continued to be so if you compare its performance to other falls in the world, where arrivals are upwards of 30 million, as in the case of the Niagara. And between me and Zambia, my sister here, we hardly hit 1.5 million. So we are seeing a post-election, a post-general assembly period where the arrivals would have been enhanced to the extent where we can begin to significantly benchmark ourselves and our performance to other falls in the world like the Iguazu, the Niagara Falls. But more importantly, we have attempted to pitch this General Assembly as the People's General Assembly and try and make our people relevant to the hosting itself. So if you walk through Livingstone and Victoria Falls, you will see that there's been road upgrades. Our hospitals have been upgraded. But more importantly, this destination now is a cyber city. Before the General Assembly, it wasn't a cyber city. Now we have seen the collaborative effort of all our telecommunication providers in the destination working for one unit of purpose to make this destination so accessible on the internet. And it is so important to the extent that there are only two revolutions taking place in our contemporary times. It is IT and travel, and both of them are assisting each other. In the past, it would take 3 years to travel from London to the Cape. Now it's done under 10 hours, and I'm hoping in the future, maybe a decade from today, due to the development of rocket science, we could do it in under 6 hours. But that in itself is happening on the back of the IT revolution. And I'm happy to showcase between us, Zimbabwe and Zambia, a destination where the entirety of the Victoria Falls is now a hotspot. You can be accessed on 4G almost immediately. That's one direct benefit. I couldn't attach a value to it because the telecommunication providers themselves know how much they have spent. But more importantly, it is the intangible benefits of this General Assembly perceptionally, which will leave us at a higher level, perception-wise. And I'm hoping that we can begin on the back of an enhanced destination in terms of having received the world, and the world having come to visit and on a live witness program, go back and attest to the beauty of the Victoria Falls. So there will be a lot more coming after the General Assembly.
And that's what we need to talk about. So Richard, as with any international conference of this nature, there's always a question about follow-through. You know, taking ideas into action, and not just for it to be another talk shop. But for anything to change, it has to start somewhere, and sometimes it's around a table like this talking. And when it comes to talking as a private sector player, operating in the tourism and hospitality sector in Africa, is there enough engagement and talk between all stakeholders in the industry, especially in territory and in country?
I think we have been fortunate enough in Zambia, and we're a Zambian organisation, to have had access to our minister in Zambia. So we're lucky. We getting that access, what it does is it gives you inroads into the government's agenda, and then we're able to twin with government and go and proceed and chase our own agenda. And we're unapologetic. We are profit driven. So let's be clear, you know, one understands that. But they also, as a consequence of investing in this beautiful property, there are spin-offs for the local community. And if you go back 13, 15 years, Livingstone wasn't what it is today. And somebody has to come in and do that catalyst. And so our expectation is that going forward after this event, if we can maintain those links with the Zambian government and make sure that we are able to twin with them and drive the tourism to levels where we haven't experienced them before, then I think we've done our job. Now, from a Zimbabwean side, we have had much less engagement. And I think if we could then come and engage with them in order to do things like opening borders, like that. At the moment, it's open 24/7. Now, that is kind of unheard of, but you can only do that with a collaboration. So our opportunity is to engage with government as the private investor and go and try and drive this beautiful place. And obviously then to make money.
Business is business.
Absolutely.
David Minister, you mentioned the word collaboration, and other terms are also called public-private partnerships. Now, what's your response to that? I mean, you painted a very rosy picture about the relations with Zambia. How important are public-private partnerships in the tourism industry to grow this beautiful country and to grow the continent?
Maybe I'll answer it differently from the question. I'll take it from where he started, from when he said there's been good collaboration. And again, I want to say thanks to the UNWTO for this good collaboration, because in a way, apart from good collaboration between the private sector and the government, I should also say there's been better collaboration between government and the communities. Again, that is because of the UNWTO. For the first time, we have seen such effective collaboration between all the players. So apart from the private sector, the communities, and then government. And for the first time, it has been easy for government to appreciate the concerns of the private sector in the tourism industry, and also for the private sector to appreciate the weaknesses of government and the difficulties that government sometimes face in coming up with certain decisions, and even the community. But I think for me, the greatest achievement of this whole UNWTO is not the meetings that are going to follow. And I was happy when I heard SG say that this is a success. Yes, it is a success even before we start the meetings, because the most important players, that is the private sector and the communities, have truly benefited both on Zambia and Zimbabwe in the process of preparing for this General Assembly. And a number of policy decisions have taken effect just because we have had that very good collaboration. We've met almost every month. We've been meeting.
I mean, I agree with you. I think that if we can lower the barriers of entry into tourism, then what happens is that you start getting into the grassroots and you start spreading, you spread the money that gets generated out of tourism. And if we can do that and we can invest in the communities then look after national heritage sites like this, and they don't encroach into that area, because they understand that keeping it pristine, looking after it, protecting the interests of everybody. What happens is that you have a sustainable income stream for everybody, for future to come. And I think that that's quite important for us, is protecting what we've got, okay, and making sure that when we reinvest in the interests of where we are operating.
But Minister, that requires policies. And let's go back to the Minister's point about being a politician. You are a national minister sitting as part of a cabinet. And every year we look at the annual budget, and there are various portfolios. In terms of ranking, where tourism sits, especially in relation and next to priorities such as healthcare, education, resource mining, how big a priority is tourism?
Well, you have to claim your space within the limited fiscal environment on both sides of the bridge, I think. It's a question of advocacy and advancing the importance of the sector to fiscal planners and to the state itself. And I'm happy to say that the two governments, through their state presidents, President Mugabe and President Sata, marked their appreciation of tourism through the signing of the Golden Book on Tourism, which in itself is a reaffirmation of their support for tourism. And going forward, once the president does that for your sector, you can't wait for him to come and box in your corner all the time. You have to move and really claim that space. And we have done so, I think, across the border, across the bridge, by invoking two statutory instruments that saw a new duty dispensation being put into place, where business would import capital goods duty-free for the purposes of upgrading their infrastructure, soft furnishings, and anything to do with the preparation of, not just of this event, but generally for the upgrade of the sector. And I intend, if I'm reappointed, and I hope I'm reappointed, to extend the tenure of these statutory instruments for the next 5 years, so that we don't do it for just the General Assembly, but we give them a 5-year life where business can ride on the back of such a dispensation to continue to improve their products. But I also want to share with my sister here and the Secretary General and business here, because he is also eligible to come and invest across the border. We have set aside 1,200 hectares of our most prime land next to the Victoria Falls airport, where, as you can see, there's a new vision being planted there of a $150 million upgrade of the Victoria Falls airport. And tourism is only tourism when people arrive. So you have to fix the issue of arrivals by making sure that accessibility is guaranteed through airport upgrades and signing new line agreements. Once that is in place and you fix the issue of connections and connectivity, I think you have a good product going. But we have 1,200 hectares of prime land, which we are servicing, and we are inviting the investing community to ride again on the back of these duty and free dispensations that I'm mentioning here, to come and actually go into PPPs with the government of Zimbabwe and other individuals who may want to collaborate on new business ventures. So there's a lot going, but we are conscious of the fact that we are in a conservation, transfrontier conservation area. So we will not interfere with the current Victorian setting of the Victoria Falls, but we also think that it is high time we induced some ultra-modernism to the destination. so that it just doesn't capture the elderly traffic, which is quite evident on both sides of the border, but it begins to attract the youth and can attract their attention and stay for much longer periods than is currently the case.
Secretary General, nobody needs convincing. We understand the value of tourism. I mean, your own studies by the World Bank, by the World Economic Forum, all say that travel and tourism are critical sectors to develop a country's economic development, to create sustainable development. I took a look at the World Bank's ranking of tourism countries and who's the most competitive, and the top three, at least in the African context, are countries that have made it key pillars of the economic growth programs. Is this the key to success?
You understand it, we understand it. The world does not come to a clear understanding yet. Political leaders need to be more sensitive to how important tourism is in their lives. And the key to what Minister Mzembi has just said is that we need to make more effort in linking tourism to social and economic development. And that task is not done yet. In the minds of the public and in the minds of many even political leaders, tourism is still associated to good life, leisure,
beautiful
settings, which it is. But in addition to that, it is about bringing income and bringing hope and excitement to people in their own homes. It's about people. And I think what Minister Masebo just said is very, very important. The General Assembly here in Victoria Falls and Livingston is really most important because of the smile that you see on the faces of the young women and men of these two villages, the excitement that it has generated. They see that there is a sense of pride, and I think Sir Richard also did it very eloquently when he said that it makes people feel more proud about what they have and want to protect it because they know that the world respects them for that, and they also know that it is generating more income. So both on the political, if I may say, pride that it creates amongst people, and on the economic level of being a real down-to-earth generator of income, tourism is a very important sector. Is it yet understood, acknowledged by the public in general? The answer is not yet.
And Minister, how do we get to there? Is it a case about education? I'm just thinking when we were at school and we're learning the history of our country, does the Zambian population know that the Victoria Falls are a unique World Heritage Site? Do they understand their country, the values? Is it about growing our young children to understand the value of their country? Because the best ambassadors of the world are ambassadors from our own countries.
I'll answer that question, but just get it back to the initial question on where do we sit in terms of prioritizing tourism in Zambia. I will say that His Excellency the President Sata has placed tourism as one of the 4 pillars of our economy at the moment. Previously it was not the case, but at the moment it is one of the key sectors. And for Zambia, you will find that even in terms of resources, there has been a shift of resources into the tourism sector. But as you will notice that tourism is not a sector on its own, it's heavily dependent on other subsectors which may not be. Yeah. And to that effect, this is why for Zambia there's been massive investment in infrastructure. And for this destination, we have a new airport, a very beautiful international airport.
And it still smells of paint, it's fresh paint.
That it is.
Yeah, and we've put up new roads, not just the main roads, but even roads within the communities. We've improved water and sanitation, electrification. So there's been massive infrastructure development here at the destination by government because of the importance that the government has placed. And 2 weeks ago, our government spokesperson was giving details on the number of jobs that have been created in the last 1 year. And the number was something like 372,000 jobs had been created, of which 70% of those jobs were from tourism. So just that helps the people to begin to appreciate the importance of tourism, but not just the people, but the policymakers, the politicians. And the point the Secretary General has indicated of that we are not yet there is very correct even for Zambia. Whilst His Excellency has placed tourism as an important sector, the entire government may not see it that way until we begin to show results. For example, now, even my colleagues in cabinet are beginning to really come out positive in terms of assisting even when it comes to certain policies that hinder on tourism, issues of easy access to a country and infrastructure and so on and so forth. Even the communities themselves are beginning to appreciate and are beginning to see value in the natural resources that God has given them. So the answer to that is, in the past, it has not been the case. Even I myself, I've just begun to appreciate what God has given us, the natural resources. I didn't even know about them. But now I'm beginning to appreciate and to know. And therefore, even the local people, there has been massive information dissemination now in the schools, the community, and our national information sector has helped the tourism industry. In the past, they would charge us for every little advert we put on the TV or in the newspaper. But now, they're not charging us. So you find that everybody is singing tourism in Zambia. It has taken such center stage as if it was one of the key ministries. Before, it was one of those that was at the back, on the sideline. But now it's a very, very important ministry, and I feel very important.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a third party to all of this. There's the public, there's government, and then there's business.
And there's business.
Now, Sir Richard, for tourism to succeed, you need to lure FDI and you need to get investment. From an international perspective, what are you looking at for your investment destinations, and is it about a conducive policy environment? The Minister mentioned, access to infrastructure, proper infrastructure. What are you looking at when you decide to plough your money into a specific economy?
I think it's the security of tenure is something that's really important to us. The return on the investment, that's for us to worry about. Okay, so we would never look to government to secure our return on the investment, because that's up to us. What we do want is we want good access, we want reasonable access to finance. We want barriers to entry to be reduced. One case in point is that there is this yellow fever discussion that's taking place. That's a hindrance for us because it hinders the European market, and there's all discussions about whether a yellow fever injection you should give to a young child or should give to anybody, quite frankly, and as a consequence that is a hindrance. I think what we look from government is we just look for support in our endeavours. So whether it be a work permit, whether it be access to a natural resource, whether it be redevelopment of our property, as our good minister said, with regards to reducing of import duties, which we have received very handsomely for this particular project. Now what they do is that it drives the incentive to want to invest. And I think that's, from our point of view, that's what we want to do, is we want to drive that incentive. And then you've got to be able to get access to local communities. Because if we don't have access and we don't have local community support, you will never make a success of an investment like this, because the community looks after you. They will come and sell their produce to you, and if they get a reasonable price, they will go and reinvest in their farm, and they will make sure that they can produce something that can give us.
Yes, so I think a good way of looking at this is to ask governments to look at tourism as their own investment, and to try to filter decisions that are taken, whether on the economic level, financial level, regulations, from a tourism-sensitive perspective. If we just try to attune governments to that and to think about it as their own investment, if tourism grows, then every other thing in this country would benefit.
And the knock-on is huge.
And the returns of government, even for the fiscal, sometimes we were able to prove in many countries around the world from studies of UNWTO that a certain intelligent tax regime would eventually bring more revenues even to the central budget than a arbitrary imposition of taxation on travel that would look like it's bringing in more money, which initially would be drained down because the businesses themselves will not be able to flourish. So it's that mindset that needs to be established in the minds of government, that this is a baby that needs to be given a chance to grow so that it could pay you back.
Agreed. Like visas, those kind of things.
Visas,
exactly
taxes, aviation, infrastructure, as the minister said here. Everything comes into place if we put our mindset that tourism is important. And it's a national investment, it's not just a business enterprise. Correct. The sector itself is a national investment.
I think the difficulty is communicating the importance of the tourism sector to fiscal planners, to government itself, to colleague ministers who are supposed to enable and facilitate the sector. And if you can't measure it, you can't know it, you can't package it as well. So I think the policy agenda, even of this General Assembly, must communicate to the effect of how do we communicate ourselves to central government, to our colleagues, to the heads of government on the importance of the sector, and then communicate back to the nation through policies. And I want to share with you what we've done across the bridge. We've designated the entire country as a tourism development zone. And that in itself brings in the masses into the chain. They know that they can start village hotels, what I would ordinarily refer to as village hotels, hotels. They know that in a transfrontier conservation area like the one that we have here in the Kaza, they can have broad-based participation through operators who are in the area and so forth. So I think it's policy communication of the importance of the sector. Designating it as a pillar is the first important step, which is also taken place across the border. But beyond that, I think there must be robust policy communication on the importance of tourism. And then going forward, you will see everybody just chilling in.
But when you believe in something and when you understand something, there's a sense of national pride. And then it's an industry you would want to look after and portray, this vision to the rest of the world. But with like any industry, reputation matters in tourism. And historically, we've seen on the continent, a hesitance from investors and even travelers to go through, for example, areas like Sierra Leone and Rwanda because of the perceived history of war and famine. We have the situation in Egypt to our north with what's going on there, that people think, the whole country is burning. From a government perspective, how important is reputation and brand management when it comes to the tourism industry?
Well, I think you've said it all by the examples that you have given yourself and what has happened to those countries where there has been some disturbances. Lucky for us in Zambia, Zambia has remained peaceful since independence, 1964. And we are a very democratic country. And the Zambian people generally are very warm. I'm sure you have seen that. And we feel that stability of a nation is very important to tourism. There will be no tourists that would visit, a country which is mad with vices, whether it be corruption or violence and wars and things like that. But I think luckily for Africa, I think that realization has come. And to that effect, I think that the destination Africa is going to be one of the best destinations in the near future. Like he says, it's the rising star, and I'm sure that the data, the figures that will be coming up through the UNWTO in future on Africa will show that Africa will receive more visitors because of the peace and the realization by respective governments on the need to have a stable continent.
Now, SG, it's about perception sometimes, and sometimes we as media proliferate perhaps the wrong perception. How do you break through that? How do you break through the clutter and build your brand despite what, mainstream media would say?
The issue of perception is not the domain of any particular country or any particular region. It's a developing countries, a developing world symptom and phenomena that has been prevailing in the last few decades. But it is breaking apart. With the intensification of communication and people traveling more and people knowing more about each other, people know what's right and what's not right. And we have had some very great examples of success stories that have broken through and reversed that perception. Our advice has always been to many countries that are sometimes feeling that they are targeted with this perception is go beyond it. In front of one negative story, produce 1,000 positive stories, because there are 1,000 positive stories, 1 million positive stories. And it's working. And I can give you a lot of examples of countries that have been really able to break out of this. Yesterday there was a civil war, and today and tomorrow it's a flourishing country. The Balkans, for example, that have suffered from such drastic event in the last 2 decades, are now prime tourism destination. Look at a country like Croatia. Look at a country like Colombia.
Rwanda, closer to home.
Rwanda is, the example that you brought is an example that reversed itself. I was in Rwanda last month. It's a flourishing destination. So it's not an excuse, but it's also an opportunity to remind the world that please be fair about judging countries and let people make their own judgments and don't label countries like that, because sometimes that can be unfair and it hurts. We know that.
Yeah.
Mzembi, so what about brand management?
Well, I'm a very good example and case study of what we should do with brand management in itself. But Zimbabwe's natural attractiveness, according to the World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Index report, is ranked 20 out of 134 countries. When you factor in the image issues, the overall country competitiveness is 133 out of 134. So a General Assembly like this one is a perception management program which seeks to close the gap between 20 and 134. And how do you do it? You bring the people to the destination and they see it for themselves.
Experience it firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. But happily, what has happened in the last decade has been the ICT sector revolution, which in itself has transformed people's minds. They no longer need to depend on national advisories to pass a certificate of competency or safety on a destination, because they are able on the internet, tablet or iPad or their phones to quickly check for themselves and verify some of the information that is passed unfairly on destinations, because you can't hide from internet. So what we have seen in this destination is that, notwithstanding the frosty relations in the past that Zimbabwe, for example, has had with, say, countries like the US itself is the #1 source market for this destination, because citizens are able to check for themselves. And so is the case with Europe, second in line in terms of source of arrivals into the destination. So we can only applaud the revolution that is taking place in the ICT sector. It has certainly equalized the situation, but it does not absolve also nation states from peer review and behaving in a manner that does not cause collateral damage to others. And I'm happy to say that in this context, Southern Africa is a peace haven. I would not even isolate Zimbabwe or Zambia. The entire Southern African product, sub-Saharan product, is in a very stable and peaceful destination. And I think we are also benefiting, fairly or unfairly, from events in the countries that we have already cited, because there's already a downward shift to our destination, and we are benefiting from it. And I would only say we must build on those building blocks, those peace building blocks, to make sure that we build a strong regional product, because the future in tourism is not about anyone visiting Zimbabwe or Zambia, it's the regional product. And I'm happy to say that in this region, the Kaiser Transfandia region, to which the Victoria Falls is sitting right at the center, you may not understand this, we have 7 international airports within the Kaiser and 54 activities. That is what we should be pitching to the European, because they don't come here to spend money on a single destination. They want all these regionally integrated products, and that to them is value for money.
And Minister, that's a perfect note to leave it before the break. But when we get back, we'll talk about this regional integration, regional transfer and travel and tourism, and we'll also talk about growing out domestic tourism in Africa. Until then, stay tuned.